Privilege to introduce Sir for this webinar. Actually, Sir needs no introduction. Sir is the professor and head Department of Reproductive Medicine and Surgery, Sri Ramchandra Institute of Higher Education and Research in Chennai. Sir started the first super specialty course, that is MCH in Reproductive Medicine and Surgery in India. Sir is the recipient of many awards, including Dr. B.C. Roy National Award in 2015 as an eminent medical teacher. Sir also received the Distinguished Faculty Award in Chennai. Sir is the expert panel member of to Medical Council of India to formulate syllabi and minimum eligibility criteria for MCH in reproductive medicine and surgery course. Sir is also a board member of reproductive medicine of National Board of Examination. Sir is a member of the committee to prepare syllabi for fellowship in reproductive medicine and fellowship in clinical embryology to NTR University of Health Sciences in Vijayawada, Andhra Pradesh. Sir is an honorary consultant and external board member of JIPMET and helped to establish IVF center at JIPMET. Founder Secretary of Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry chapter of VISA, also past President of Obs and Gynecological Society of Southern India in 2010 in Chennai, Organizing Secretary of All India Congress of Obs and Gynecologists in 2015 in Chennai, Organizing Secretary of Indian Society for Assisted Reproductive Annual Conference, that's ISAR in 2015 in Chennai, and also organizing Secretary of Indian Society for Assisted Reproduction Annual Conference in Chennai in 2018. So with this, may I request and invite Sir for his talk on male factor infertility, options beyond ICSI and donor sperm usage. So thank you, Sir, and over to you.
Thank you, Prachi, for your kind introduction. At the outset, I would like to thank the Shield Healthcare, particularly Mr. Balaji, for inviting me and share some of my thoughts with you all today. I'm going to speak on recent advances in the management of male factor infertility, options beyond ICSI and donor sperm usage. Infertility is a prevalent condition affecting an estimated 70 million people globally. The WHO estimates that 9% of couples worldwide struggle with fertility issues and that male factor contributes to 50% of the issues. Many genetic and lifestyle factors have been implicated in male infertility. However, about 30% of cases are still thought to be idiopathic. The cornerstone in evaluation of male infertility is semen analysis. Semen samples can provide valuable information about the fertility of the male in certain situations. It does have several limitations. Males with poor quality sperm could conceive when their relative subfertility is compensated by a young female with a high probability of conception. How to approach to male infertility? You have to take detailed history and thorough examination. It will give us an idea whether he is not normal or abnormal. Suppose if he is abnormal, treat that abnormality, there is a chance that they can become pregnant. If there is no abnormality, then we have to advise the semen analysis. It may be normal or abnormal. If it is normal, then we have to think of sperm function test. If there is any fertilization failure, other things we can make out. Suppose if it is abnormal, it may be azoospermia or oligospermia. Then depending upon the condition, we may have to do the hormonal assay and genetic evaluation like karyotyping and Y chromosome microdeletions. Suppose in wards, if there is no, everything is normal, then we'll call it as idiopathic male infertility. There we can treat medical management. We cannot give 100% guarantee. There is some patient they can improve. Suppose if it is azoospermia, then we can go for the FNAs, fine needle aspiration cytology or testicular biopsy to differentiate whether it is obstructive azoospermia or non-obstructive azoospermia. If it is obstructive azoospermia, depending upon the site and size of block, we can either do microsurgery or we can go for the ART procedure. In case of non-obstructive azoospermia, we can go for the micro-TZ. Up to 50 to 60% of patients, we can get the sperms. With that, we can go for the ICSI. Or if the patient decided to go for the donor insemination or adoption, that option also is available. Usually, when the semen analysis comes, even if the sperm parameters are normal, then 3 to 4 times we'll do the IUI. If the patient is not conceiving, just directly we'll go for IVF or ICSI. Same way, if it is votes, just like that, if it's borderline is there, we'll do 3 times or 4 times IUI. If it is not there, then we'll go for the ICSI. Is there any other way we can avoid ICSI and we can, by modifying some of the conditions, whether we'll be able to make the patient to conceive naturally, or if there is it is not improving, then we can go and stop directly earlier itself going. So if normal parameters are there, there are 2 conditions that can affect the fertility. One is reactive oxidative species. Next is DNA fragmentation. Next, if it is votes, here there is a chance is there with the medical therapy we can improve the sperm count and other parameters. Then there is a chance that patient can become pregnant. If it's varicose is there, if you exclude all other causes for fertility in the both female and male, then if you do the surgery, varicose surgery, there is a chance is there the sperm count can improve and patient can become pregnant. When it comes to the azoospermia, just like that we are advising donor insemination or adoption. So if you go into the depth, if you make out whether there is obstructive azoospermia is there or non-obstructive azoospermia, obstructive by taking the sperms from the testes, you can do the ICSI. Non-obstructive, until now we are thinking like that, there is no chance at all for this patient. We will advise them either donor insemination or adoption. Nowadays, the invention of the micro-TZ make a lot of difference. Up to 70% of patients you can get the sperms, even if the FSH levels are very high, 40, 50 is there also you can get. So for them, if it is not, we can try some of the medical therapy, so then it will improve. And also there are newer treatment modalities like intratesticular injection of PRP, stem cell therapy, artificial gametes are available. We will see each one separately. Role of oxidative stress in male infertility. Oxidative stress is defined as an imbalance between the production of reactive oxygen species and the scavenging capacity of available antioxidants, resulting in redox paradox. Sperm cells are vulnerable to ROS because of the abundance of polyunsaturated fatty acids in their plasma membrane and cytoplasm and limited antioxidant capacity and DNA repair system. Certain levels of ROS are required for maturation of spermatozoa, acrosome reaction, capacitation, hyperactivation, and sperm oocyte fusion. Increased ROS along with decreased antioxidant defense result in redox imbalance, reduced sperm motility, and leads to sperm DNA damage. ROS promote peroxidation of lipids, resulting in intracellular oxidative burden. The sequence of events involved in lipid peroxidation, loss of membrane integrity with increased permeability, reduced sperm motility, structural DNA damage, and apoptosis. Several intrinsic and extrinsic factors have been associated with increased oxidative stress in the male reproductive system. If you see this one, we will have, there may be external factor like age, lifestyle, estrogen, stress, genital infections, malignancy, toxins, radiation, chemotherapy, or smoking, alcohol. If the patient is obese, this all leads to increased ROS. And also intrinsic factors like cellular metabolism, varicocele, immature sperms, increased WBC count also leads to increased ROS. So there is an imbalance between the oxidants and antioxidant, resulting in the increased oxidative stress, which leads to sperm DNA fragmentation, cross-linking of chromosomal anomalies, microDNA damage, impaired fertilization, infertility, recurrent miscarriages, genetic diseases, childhood malignancy, reduced sperm motility, sperm membrane lipid peroxidation. These are the problems you will get because of increased ROS. So there are 2 types of antioxidants are available. One is enzymatic and non-enzymatic antioxidants. Superoxide desmodase, catalase, and glutathione pyruvates are enzymatic antioxidants. Vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin C, vitamin B, and glutathione peroxidase, coenzyme Q10, carnitine, and minerals like zinc, copper, selenium, and chromium are non-enzymatic antioxidants. What are the pathological effects of increased ROS on male fertility? Sperm characteristics were significantly lower in infertile men with high levels of ROS. Alter DNA integrity in the sperm nucleus by inducing breakage of DNA strands, base modifications, and chromatin cross-linking. Spermatozoa have limited defense mechanisms against ROS-induced DNA damage. Oxidation tests could induce a rapid loss of intracellular ATP, resulting in axonal damage with decreased sperm viability and mobility, increased midpiece structural defects with deleterious effects on sperm capacitation and the acrosome reaction. Lipid peroxidation of the sperm membrane is a key mediator of ROS-induced sperm damage, leading to infertility. What are the antioxidants available for treating these conditions? Vitamin C, vitamin E, these two are the best, and other things like coenzyme Q10, N-acetylcysteine, carnitine, trace elements such as zinc, selenium, pentoxifylline, and many times these all mixed, like the combination of these oral antigens can be given to treat these conditions. We'll see what is the evidence. There is a review article, Role of Oxidative Stress in Male Infertility, published in 2019 from Iraq. The conclusion of the review is, although ROS are essential for some reproductive processes such as capacitation and acrosome reaction, increased ROS along with decreased antioxidant defense results in oxidative stress status, which ultimately leads to sperm membrane lipid peroxidation, reduced motility, sperm DNA damage, poor pregnancy, and ART outcomes, and increased risk of genetic diseases in offspring. Various diagnostic and therapeutic options have been developed for oxidative stress. However, there is lack of agreement on selecting. There are so many tests are there, but there is no lack of agreement on selecting which test is best, and type and duration of antioxidant treatment, as well as defining the target patient group. By giving antioxidants, we can also definitely 100% improvement will be there. So further studies are warranted to overcome these limitations, improve fertility potential, and reduce the risk of genetic diseases and malignant tumors in newborns. Even if you cannot say like 100% improvement, it is not harming anything, so that we can give this to the patients for 3 to 4 months, so that there is a chance here there it can do good things. Then we'll go to sperm DNA fragmentation. Sperm DNA fragmentation testing measures the quality of sperm as a DNA package carrier. DNA damage, such as fragmentation and denaturation, can have adverse effects on fertilization and embryo development and can cause infertility. Infertile men have a greater extent of sperm DNA damage and poorer sperm DNA integrity than fertile men. And the fertilization of DNA damaged spermatozoa can increase the risk of genetic diseases in the offspring. So if you see here also we will have extrinsic factors and intrinsic factor, the causes for the sperm DNA fragmentation. In extrinsic factors, we have primary pathologies of male reproductive system, systemic pathologies, environmental lifestyle factors like drugs, smoking, pollution, radiation leads to increased oxidative stress. Same way, systemic pathologies like cancer, diabetes, systemic infection will lead to increased oxidative stress. Same way, primary pathologies of male reproductive system like varicocele, prolonged stasis during epididymal transmit, immature abnormal spermatozoa will lead to abortive apoptosis and defective maturation, which leads the vulnerable sperm to have increased sperm DNA fragmentation. This leads to infertility, impaired reproductive outcomes, even if you go for IUI, IVF or ICSI, increased risk for genetic and birth defects. What is the evidence for DNA fragmentation effect on the pregnancy rate? The role of sperm DNA fragmentation, male factor infertility, a systemic review published in Arab Journal of Urology. The authors are from Hong Kong and USA. Here, what are the indications, clinical indications where they are advised testing? If there is increased sperm DNA fragmentation testing is recommended in patient with grade 2-3 varicocele with normal conventional semen parameters. Even if the semen analysis is normal, if they have grade 3, grade 2 or grade 3 varicocele, then that is an indication. If the SDF testing is recommended in patient with grade 1 varicocele also, if there is a borderline abnormal conventional sperm, if there is some problem is there with the semen analysis, even grade 1, we will advise them to do the SDF testing. Next is unexplained infertility, or she had failure, IUI failure, or recurrent pregnancy lot. Here also we will advise them to undergo this SDF testing. Next is IVF or ICSI failures also. This is also an indication, or borderline abnormal semen parameters with risk factors should also will be that is modifiable risk factors like diabetes or smoking or alcohol if the husband is taking this type of things. If we modify, here also we have to advise them to go. These are the things they tried, like short abstinence, oral anti-accident therapy, varicocelectomy, sperm selection techniques like MAX, IMSI, PIXI. Next is preparation also, they change density gradient centrifugation, swim up technique, or sometimes they say like instead of ejaculated sperm, if you take the sperm directly from the testes, that have less DNA fragmentation problem. So, and these are the assays available. I was telling there are so many assays are there. We cannot definitely say this is best or this is, whichever is available we can use. So in conclusion of this review, numerous studies have shown the relationship between SDF and reproductive outcomes in natural conception and assisted reproduction. Even the patient conceives, the miscarriage rate is very high if they have increased DNA fragmentation index. Recent supportive evidence of effective treatments as this in managing high SDF further consolidate the role of SDF testing in the management of male factor infertility. Although there is insufficient evidence for routine SDF testing for the evaluation of infertile men, several specific clinical indications have been proposed based on the current best evidence. This represents an important step forward in promoting the wider clinical application of SDF testing and facilitating future clinical research in male infertility. Another article published in Asian Journal of Andrology, a systematic review and meta-analysis to determine the effect of sperm DNA damage on IVF and ICSI. You see here, they tested the effect of DNA damage on clinical pregnancy rate in IVF, clinical pregnancy rate in ICSI, and mixed also, like both IVF together also they have checked. Here, the conclusion of the study, in this systematic review and meta-analysis, we have found a modest but statistically significant detrimental effect of sperm DNA damage on clinical pregnancy rate after IVF, ICSI are mixed also. So definitely there is decreased pregnancy rate. Although the adverse effect of sperm DNA damage on clinical pregnancies was observed in all three treatment groups, this effect appears to vary according to the type of assay used to measure sperm DNA damage. Next, another thing in fertility and sterility, reproductive outcome. I was telling, even if you use the ejaculated sperm, the DNA fragmentation index is very high. When you go for the ICSI, also the pregnancy rate will be affected. So that they had tried taking sperm directly from the testes. So there is a paper here, reproductive outcomes of testicular versus ejaculated sperm for intraspitous or the ICSI with high levels of DNA fragmentation in semen. Systematic review meta-analysis. Here, sperm DNA fragmentation rates between testicular and ejaculated sperm. Here they have seen the ejaculated sperm is having more DNA, sperm DNA fragmentation, and the fertilization rate, they have seen the fertilization is better with testicular sperm when compared with the ejaculated sperm. Next is pregnancy rate also is better with the testicular directly extracted sperms from the testes than the ejaculated sperm. And also the miscarriage rate is higher in ejaculated sperm when compared with the testicular sperm for ICSI used. And live birth rate also is higher in testicular sperm than the ejaculated sperm. The conclusion of the review is testicular sperm have lower levels of SDF than ejaculated sperm, with the testicular ICSI for high post-testicular dip. So the advice to go for the testicular ICSI than the ejaculated thing. Infertile couples may benefit from testicular ICSI if male partners have confirmed high SDF in the ejaculate. Next, we'll see the varicocele management. There are various, this is going to be a controversial topic. Some papers say there is no effect. Some papers say there definitely effect is there. We'll see what the evidence says. The role of varicocele repair for male infertility in the era of ART. The rates of, so there are various ways of doing the operation, like high ligation, inguinal approach, subinguinal approach, microsurgical inguinal, microsurgical subinguinal, laparoscopic, or embolization. So with this, so the conclusion of the review is decreased oxidative stress and sperm DNA fragmentation after varicocele repair and superior cost effectiveness versus IVF ICSI. That says, if you after undergoing varicocele surgery, definitely the oxidative stress and DNA fragmentation will come down. Varicocele repair is a widespread, well-established procedure that can improve semen parameters in men with infertility. Those patients with the borderline, there is a chance that their natural conception can occur, or if it is very low, then also like if you do ICSI with the sperm, the pregnancy rate will be better. The effect of such treatment on the pregnancy rate is unclear because evidence is limited due to difficulties in recruiting patients for studies. Among the repair techniques, so I showed you there are so many techniques, of which the microsurgical subinguinal technique is the best of all the techniques. Next is another paper, varicocelectomy may improve results for sperm retrieval and pregnancy rate in non-obstructive azoospermic men also. What they have done is the non-obstructive azoospermia associated with varicocele and non-obstructive azoospermia without varicoceles. Here what they have done is they did the varicocelectomy. Then after some time, 2 to 3 months, they went for the micro-TG they did. There if you see the spontaneous pregnancy, here if it is very, after doing, some patient they conceived spontaneously, around 14% of patients they conceived spontaneously. Some required by taking the sperm from the testes and ICSI they conceived. So here the total pregnancy rate is, fertilization rate is 92% and the live birth rate is 23% and pregnancy rate is 36%. So even in non-obstructive azoospermia, the varicocele is there. If you do the repair, so the sperm retrieval rate also will increase and the live birth rate also will increase here. The conclusion of the study is microsurgical varicocelectomy in non-obstructive azoospermia men may have positive effect on post-operative sperm ejaculate and natural or assisted pregnancies. Both there will be improvement will be there. Meanwhile, sperm retrieval rate and live birth rate was higher in patients with varicocele and non-obstructive azoospermia than comparing with without varicocele non-obstructive azoospermia. So this is the microscopic subinguinal varicocelectomy. Here the advantage is under magnification we can identify the veins and the artery. Always many times we may ligate the artery when you are doing macroscopically. Here that problem won't be there. So there won't be any the testicular atrophy. So that is the best thing, and the recurrence rate will be very less, and also the hydrocele formation also is very less with this technique. So if you decide to go for the varicocelectomy, better to go for the microsurgical subinguinal varicocelectomy is the best. Next is there any role, is there medical management in the male infertility with idiopathic votes? So there is many papers are there. revisiting, there is one study here. The one commonly used drug is the clomiphene citrate or sometimes tamoxifen, otherwise HCG also we'll be using. Here in this paper, what they have done is clomiphene citrate 25 milligrams daily. In other group B, they have given 50 milligrams daily, and tamoxifen 20 to 30 milligrams daily. 3 groups they have divided, and they compared the results. The conclusion of the study is estrogen antagonists like clomiphene citrate with good safety profile seem to be effective as empiric medical therapy in a subset of idiopathic infertile males. The author suggested that use of clomiphene citrate 50 milligrams than the 25 milligrams, 50 milligrams is the dose, 25 not much, or tamoxifen citrate 20 to 30 milligrams daily for 3 to 6 months is improvement is there. If there is no improvement, this is an indication to go for the ERT. Next is role of aromatase inhibitors for male infertility. So is there any role is there? We'll be doing many times. The estrogen also will be raised. That time if you give clomiphene citrate alone, it won't work. That's why along with the testosterone, if you estimate the estradiol, estrogens also, if the ratio is testosterone estrogen ratio is, if it is more than 10, then it is abnormal here. Here, if you start the aromatase inhibitors, it is going to help. Aromatase inhibitors can increase the endogenous testosterone production and serum testosterone levels. Treatment of infertile males with the aromatase inhibitors like testosterone, anastrozole, and letrozole has been associated with increased sperm production and return of sperm to the ejaculate in men with non-obstructive azoospermia. So in non-obstructive azoospermia, when there is a variation, the ratio is altered. So if you start on these drugs like anastrozole 1 milligrams daily or letrozole 2.5 milligrams daily, if you continue for 3 to 6 months, there is a chance that the spontaneous sperm itself will be there in the semen. Or if you do the biopsy, there also you can get. There is very less, there is no side effects with these drugs. Next, when it comes to the role of HCG, here what they have done is, I told you like in non-obstructive azoospermia, the treatment is going for the micro-TZ. What they have done is, here they subjected the patients for micro-TZ. Those patients who didn't get the sperms in micro-TZ itself, for them they have given the HCG 2000 IU 2 to 3 times per week, like this for 3 months. Then second time they again subjected these patients for micro-TZ. Here they got the sperms. The Leydig cells of the testis can respond positively to exogenous HCG even under hypergonadotropic conditions. HCG based hormonal therapy prior to a second micro-TZ attempt is effective in men with hypospermatogenesis. Next, when you come to the obstructive azoospermia, so this is we have various methods are there. So depending upon the thing, suppose if you think that is vasal or epididymal or some other place obstruction is there, if there is little enlargement is there in the epididymis, we can go for the percutaneous epididymal spermax. Just give the card block with gelacaine, then infiltrate locally, then take the scalp vein set, just aspirate and inject into the media, examine under a microscope, you can see the sperm, motile sperms. With this, we can use these sperms directly for ICSI. Next is all case, sometimes very difficult, you may not get if it is not enlarged. So here, this is also under microscope guidance. You can go for the microscopic epididymal sperm injection. Here under microscope, just open the epididymis, aspirate the sperms, then same thing, check for the motile sperms. Use this one for ICSI. Next is, sometimes if the epididymis is not enlarged, you cannot palpate also. There From testis also you can take directly from the testicular aspiration of the sperm. Here just give the card block, then give little amount of infiltration in the local infiltration. Then same way take the scalp vein set. You have seen some tissue, we got the thing. Then here just you can desiccate the tissue, then examine under a microscope, you will get sperms. Suppose if you are not getting here also, sometimes previously they had something and test is also very small here, then you can go for the testicular extraction of the sperm, like biopsy, other things also we can do here. So take the testicular tissue directly. Next is desiccate tissue. Then take this one and examine under a microscope. You will get the sperms. So these cases, some people are very particular, they want only sperms. So that way, that time you have to do this one earlier. Then if the sperms are there, you can freeze it. Then you can go for the stimulation of the wife. Then you can transfer after fertilization. Next is in non-obstructive azoospermia, these methods all won't work. Until now, we are going for the donor insemination or advising only adoption. Nowadays, we have this micro-TZ. This is the best method. Even if the FSS is 40, 50 is there, here, if you go for the under microscope, just bisect the testis here. Under microscope, you can see here, you just see that these are the enlarged tubes you can make out when compared with other tubes. From there, you can take the tissue and we can check for the sperms. If it is there, then we can use the same thing. So the pregnancy rate after taking from the testis, it is almost equal to ejaculated sperm. So there is no, it won't produce any problems. But in non-obstructive azoospermia, always you have to better to exclude the any chromosomal problems are there or not. Micro-TZ, so micro-TZ is a safe option for treatment of non-obstructive azoospermia in men who present with infertility. However, we should caution them, always 100% we won't get the sperms from the patient. Next, these are all not working. Is there any option is there available for us? One is like platelet-rich plasma. So we'll see the effectiveness of autologous platelet-rich plasma in the therapy of infertile men with non-obstructive azoospermia. Here what we have done, so here if we inject after 3 to 4 months, there is sperms are seen. The conclusion of this study, numerous studies have proven PRP to have a statistically significant level of regenerative potential in different branches of medicine. PRP therapy has been successful for the treatment of some causes of female infertility. The treatment potential of PRP for male infertility may not be underestimated. Just prepare the PRP, directly inject into testes, wait for some time. If needed like 2 times or 3 times you do, then you can check for the thing. So there is sometimes, if there is no, we may get the sperms in the ejaculate, otherwise do the test for biopsy, then you can get the sperms. Next is role of stem cell therapy. Stem cell therapy revolves around using the patient's own adipose tissue for harvesting cells, and this extraction procedure is carried out via liposuction. Adipose-derived stem cells are isolated in the lab, later combining these cells with the patient's own platelet-rich plasma, making a cocktail in order to enhance the effect of the treatment. The cocktail is then injected into different areas of the testicles for the effect of the treatment to show. It takes a period of about 3 months. In a study, 56 to 58% success rate in generating new sperm cells production in cases where the patient had non-obstructive azoospermia. So they showed there is definitely sperms will be available in these things. Next is the role of genetic evaluation in male infertility. The genetic testing is required whenever the sperm count is less than 5 million. That is an indication for genetic evaluation. Even though there are some problems will be there in normal sperm count is also it will be there. It is why we will do the genetic analysis, identification of the infertility causes, identification of genetic disease transmission to offspring, because if it is there, like even if you take the sperm from the testis, micro-TZ, if there is some problem in there, that will be transmitted to the offspring. So if you do the testing, so you can counsel the patient before itself, whether they want to go to their own sperm they want to use, or they want to go to the donor sperm, so that they can avoid the transmission of the same problem to the child. Next, optimization of the ART reproductive techniques. Suppose if you take the sperm and do like that, the pregnancy rate may not be good. If you are able to identify before itself, you can say the success rate, and also you can tell, then you can go for the embryo biopsy, and you can take the best sperm, that euploid embryo, then the pregnancy rate will improve. What are the genetic? There are two types of genetic analysis we'll be doing. One is chromosomal analysis. There we can see translocation, other things all like that. Second one is the Y chromosome microdeletions. So the human Y chromosome harbors genes that are responsible for tested development and also for initiation and maintenance spermatogenesis in adulthood. The long of the Y chromosome contains many ampliconic and palindromic sequences, making it predisposed to self-recombination during spermatogenesis and hence susceptible to intrachromosomal deletions. Such deletions lead to copy number variation genes of the Y chromosome, resulting in the male infertility. There are three common deletions we can see. That is called AZF, that is azoospermia factor. It's called AZF-A, AZF-B, and AZF-C. What is the importance? If you see AZF-A and AZF-B, whatever you do like biopsy, if you do micro-TZ also, you won't get sperms at all. If there is AZF-C is there, then you will definitely get the sperms. That way, for counseling purpose and to take the decision earlier itself, it will help us. Clinically, the screening of Y chromosome microdeletions would aid the clinician. It determines the cause of male infertility and decide a racial management strategy for the patient, whether to use the same his own sperms or to go for the donor sperms. All these deletions are transmitted 100% of male offspring born through ART. Testing of Y chromosome microdeletions will allow the couples to make an informed choice regarding the whether to go for the donor or their own sperm. With the emerging data on association of Y chromosome deletions with testicular cancers and neuropsychiatric conditions, long-term follow-up data is needed for infertile men harboring Y chromosome deletions. So here, these patients, they have more chance of testicular development, cancers, and also neuropsychiatric problems. So this also we can explain to them. But this, until now, it is not very 100% proved, but there is some case increase. If found, the information will change the perspective of androgenetics from infertility and might have broad implications in health. So this is the chromosome, the AZF-A, AZF-B, and C. The microdeletion will be there present in the long arm of the sperm. Next is, we'll go to spermatogonial stem cell transplantation and male infertility. So whether we can start this spermatogonial stem cells, what is the current status and future directions? Published in Arab Journal of Urology. Somatic cells may be de-differentiated into induced pluripotent stem cells and then reprogrammed to differentiate through germ cell lineage via transplantation into the testis seminiferous tubules, xenografting or germline stem cells in culture. So we can take the sperm cells, spermatogonial stem cells, and directly inject into the seminiferous tubules. Then it will be developed into sperms and it will come out. So this here, you can take the somatic cells or germ cells, then somatic cells culture you can do, that you can inject into the testis or you can culture also separately, and that you can inject to the animals also from there. So if you inject into testes, there will be directly the sperms will be ejaculated in the sperm, or you can culture and take the sperms, then you can with that you can do the ICSI. Same way germ cells also we can use for the same purpose. The conclusion of these studies, spermatogonial stem cells show promise for application for future clinical practice. Research in vitro and in animal or human or animal models of auto-allo xenografting have shown some functional success, including production of fertile offspring after culture in animals. They have tried in the mouse, it is successful. There is cause for cautious optimism with significant barriers, including concern about carcinogenesis. This is the one problem we'll be worrying actually, stem cell transplantation, whether the cells will go continues to grow and produce cancers. That's the one problem we'll be facing. Next is artificial gametes. An alternative to sexual reproduction, artificial gametes and their implications for society. Here, what is artificial gametes? Artificial gametes is the term used to refer to cells that can function in the same way as gametes, but in which these functions have been induced biochemically or through surgical intervention on the cell. That means any cell you can take that it may not be perfecting, functioning normally. Suppose if you take the cardiac cell, that will function is different. If you take liver cell, that will be different. But here, biochemically, we can make it into cardiac cell into liver cell or liver cell into the germ cell, like that we can do. That is called artificial gametes. In 2003, 2004, several papers were published detailing the derivation of gamete type cells obtained from mouse embryonic stem cells. In 2004 and 5, further research reported similar findings in human embryonic stem cells. Since then, progress have been made on the development of artificial gametes using a number of different methods. Fertile mouse offspring have been born from oocyte derived from skin cells. Not only all those things, from skin, anybody's skin also you can take. Like this, they have done the experiments on the mouse. They have taken the mouse skin cell. From there, they created the artificial germ cell, both sperms and oocytes, and the mouse were born. It may be many years before artificial germs are ready for clinical use in humans. Clearly, there are significant expectations that artificial germs, gametes, can help resolve problems that are currently amenable to existing medical interventions. If somatic cells such as skin or blood can be manipulated in the laboratory to fulfill the functions of eggs, the burdensome aspect of egg collection would be significantly diminished. Suppose there is no eggs, like diminished ovarian reserve or something, no need for us. Even normal patients also, if we are able to create the eggs from the skin cell, then no need for us to stimulate the patient, all the things. Just this itself, we can take the skin cell and grow it. Moreover, women who have already undergone the menopause would still be able to generate gametes artificially. So menopausal ladies also, there is chances that they can conceive with their own gametes. So there is a research paper posted in Science and Technology by Lauren Turner in 2018. Researcher from Kyoto University in Japan has found a way to make sperm and egg cells from skin cells. The cutting edge technique allows cells to genetically reset and persuaded to become sex cells, otherwise known as gametes. This new technique developed by Mitsuru Sato and his team could allow new healthy gametes to be made from the patient's own body cells. They are able to have children which are biologically theirs. Either sperm or eggs can be made from individuals regardless of their own biological sex. Same person, male, you can both make sperms and also take the cells from the male skin, then you can make sperms and also eggs. That's the problem. Meaning there is potential that same-sex couples could have children which are genetically related to both parties. Then we'll have problems. This technology has been in the making for a relatively long time. In 2007, Shiano Yananaka discovered that adult cells could be reprogrammed to become unspecialized stem cells, which can then become any other cell type by adding specific proteins as reprogramming factors. These stem cells are known as induced pluripotent stem cells. The team were able to take skin cells from a mouse and transform them into induced pluripotent stem cells. They then added transcription factors to turn the cells into oogonia cells, which can be divided into form egg cells. By growing these cells with cells taken from a mouse ovary, they were able to make the cells divide and become fully functional egg cells capable of making healthy mouse embryos. In 2011, the team successfully created artificial mouse sperm cells by transplanting these cells into mouse testes to cause them to develop. Even though this technique has many excited about the new possibilities, some are concerned about the ethics of the process. Some speculate that it is combined with genetic screening. There is a risk people will use it to select genetically allied embryos. So they want everybody will be genius like that. So then they can go for this type of problem. Additionally, there are some unsettling concerns of the result of the process, as it creates a possibility of a unibaby with both the sperm and the egg being created from the same person. Cells could also be easily obtained from an individual without consent and used to create an embryo. So just like a person is there just scratching itself, you can take someone's cell, like some cells that you can use to create the thing. Then this way also we will have problem. These are complex ethical concerns which need to be considered before this technique is applying clinically. In the years to come, there is a potential for the creation of artificial gametes to put an end to the world's fertility problems. But for now, people remain undecided whether this is an exciting leap forward or the start of a terrifying reproductive apocalypse. In conclusion, male infertility is a global health issue which is increasing in incidence in the world scenario. Incidence is higher in developing countries. Research in genetics, proteomics has opened new vistas in the management of so-called idiopathic infertility. Still, there is need for further research into underlying etiology and treatment of male infertility. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the excellent presentation and a lot of recent data and very recent publications you have shared. It's very useful to the doctors, for the practicing doctors. So thank you very much. There are comments as well by the doctors that the talk was very wonderful and nice data. So can I take a few questions now?
Yes, yes.
Right. The first question is from Dr. Bhavna, and the question is, in case of grade 1 varicocele, what is the role of surgeon?
Okay. See, if the indication for the, even if the sperm semen analysis is normal, if it grade 2, grade 3, like clinically visible thing, we will be advising varicocele if after excluding all other causes from the female and male also. Suppose if the patient is having like sperm abnormality, warts is there, then even if it is grade 1, it is advisable to do varicocelectomy. Then they have seen the improvement in the sperm parameters. If it is associated with, there is some problem with it, then only we'll advise grade 1 varicocele associated with some problems like warts.
Right, sir. Thank you very much. So there are again a lot of comments that the talk was wonderful and excellent from Dr. Asha Rao, Dr. Murugan. So one question is there from Dr. Janani. The question is, how long after PRP infusion we have to repeat hormone test?
Usually it takes minimum 3 months. Suppose if it's not improved, you can wait another 4 to 6 weeks also. So usually we can see the results after 3 months, 3 to 6 months. By that time, we will know whether this patient is going to respond to your treatment or not.
Right, sir. Thank you. So there is a question from Dr. Natarajan. In India, do we have artificial gamete facility? And
No, it's not there. Not.
Okay. Right. So the next question is from Dr. Arti Hanesh. How long to give HCG therapy and what is the dose?
Usually, you know, any treatment you want to go for the male thing, it takes minimum 76 days for the sperm to develop and count. So minimum 3 months. By that, after that, just you can check the thing. If there is any development, if there is some improvement, is there, you continue the same treatment for 6 months. If you continue for 6 months, there is no improvement, there is no difference, then no point in this, that treatment is failure. So minimum 6 months you have to continue, 3 to 6 months continue.
Right, sir. Thank you. So next question is from Dr. Asanta. If count is 5 million, should we go for IUI?
See, in that we have to see the motility also. Total motile sperm count is important. Just here, there, how much it is there. Minimum 3 million above is there. There is a chance is there, but when compared with other, about 10 million total motile sperm count is better. 5 also you can try. Up to 3 million is okay. Less than that is not advisable. Better to go for the ERT.
Right. Sir, is there any technique to identify or to take out good quality sperms as far as IUI is concerned and its application?
IUI, see, there are so many sperms will be there. Only technique, what you can do, there is density gradient method of sperm preparation is slightly better than other things, swim up other things. But the papers are showing like that not much different. But when compared with that, very few percent also, 2%, 5% also is better, means go for that way. There is nothing like that we can identify this. Only for ICSI purpose like that we can say. Here all the sperms will be there. We are going to get all motile sperms. So that only preparation method we can say. Otherwise we cannot.
Thank you. So next question is from Dr. Milind. If only motility is low but the count is good and patient doesn't have varicocele, then how to investigate?
We have to see whether there is any infection is there. That's the one thing. Send the semen for, or agglutination also is there. Anti-sperm antibodies also is there. That way, any other factors that can affect, like obesity also can affect that thing. All this thing that we have to identify and exclude that factors. Then even if it is not there, give a course of antibiotics like doxycycline at least 2 weeks. Then repeat after 1 month. We will know like whether this rarely it is there. There is any improvement is there or not. If the count is very high, even if the motility is low, sometimes there is a chance is there that patient can. Next, I told you like this sperm DNA fragmentation index we can estimate all these things. So if you're able to correct, there is a chance there. Otherwise, still it is not improving, then we have to say that microscopic things that all we cannot make out. By electron microscope studies only we can make out the defects in the structural defects. So there we have to go for only for the ICSI.
Thank you, sir. So again, a lot of comments for a nice presentation, excellent talk, and I'm still waiting for some more questions. So one question is again from Dr. Asanta, is letrozole or clomiphen, which is better?
Letrozole?
Letrozole or clomiphen cycle?
No. See, clomiphen is the drug of choice for giving for the idiopathic thing. When you will go for the letrozole and anastrozole, if the ratio, testosterone and estradiol ratio is altered, usually like if the estradiol levels is very high, there even if you give clomiphen alone, it's not going to work. There to correct that one, both clomiphen and anastrozole 1 milligram daily or letrozole 2.5 milligram daily combined together you can give. Then it will improve. It reduces the estradiol level so that testosterone levels will be increased. That way it will help.
Thank you, sir. So I don't see more questions. So one more question is there. So can I take that question?
Yes.
Okay. What is the role of medical management in idiopathic semen? Which one to use? I think oligosperm.
Okay, that's what we have to exclude idiopathic. Just we can try here only medical management. So we should counsel the patient saying definitely we cannot guarantee you like 100% improvement, but we can try for 3 months minimum. So here 25 milligrams clomifene what I will be giving for 25 days in a month, 5 days break, then again like this. So you have to continue for 3 months. Sometimes if you have that, that depends upon where the FSH levels also you have to check. If it is slightly low, then supplement HCG also 2000 IU twice a week. This is also for along with that one for 3 months. Then just check the semen analysis. At the same time, the serum testosterone level should not cross 800 nanograms. That also you have to see. And also it should not be very low also. This way, if you monitor, there is a chance that it can improve. If it is improving, continue this one for 6 months, then the improvement will be there. If it is not improving, then no point in continuing again beyond 6 months in these patients.
Right, sir. So again, a question from same doctor, Dr. Raitokar. So what is better? I mean, what is your recommendation other than clomifene, and your opinion about antioxidants?
Well, antioxidants, see here, other things like clomifene, other things, hormonal thing that can create problems for long time when you're using without thing. Here, antioxidants, by giving 3 to 4 months is not going to create any problem. At the same time, if you get some benefit, that is better. Suppose if you were able to identify if the DNA fragmentation is very high, even that is not there, if you are not able to test, antioxidants you can continue. This is not going to create any problem to the patient. At the time there is a chance is there, it can help the patient. Giving is not a problem. It is not wrong. Continue for 3 to 4 months.
Right, sir. Thank you very much. So I don't see any more questions in the chat box. So I will say thank you again and again. Thank you very much for the excellent talk. So my question is, can we share your presentation with the doctors? So that's my question.
Yes, no problem. You're free. You can share, no problem.
Yes, sir, thank you. So we have done the recording and we will be sharing this presentation. So thank you very much, sir, for that.
Thank you,
Nice
Dr.
talk.
Prachi, for managing this nicely. Thank you, Mr. Balaji. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, doctor. Thank you.
Okay.